So, the truly unique thing about wikis is this ability to use this wiki syntax to create links. Since wikis are web pages, we know they wouldn't be what they are without links, right? We mentioned the internet and Wikipedia as kind of the go-to examples of these technologies, but another type of communication has become viral these days as well. So much so that it has its own place in today's vernacular, including an entire universe all its own, known as the blogosphere. Blogs come from combining the words web and log. They're meant to be a kind of electronic diary that happens to be shared with the world. You should know that blogs can be created in a variety of SharePoint sites, but you also have one by default in your My Site. Now, with that said, you should know that in my opinion, not everyone needs or should have a blog. It's not that everyone doesn't have a right to say what they want, freedom of speech and all that, I know. I just don't think that we all need to share every thought that we have like some people seem to be doing these days. But let's start with why we need blogs. They really are a beneficial thing. We need them because sometimes we have information to share, but it's more one way than collaborative. In other words, we have something to say, but we don't necessarily want the input of other people. I know that doesn't sound quite nice, but that's the way it is. And this could be an individual who's a subject matter expert, or it could be from a department. A department could have a blog. So the IT department could put out information that they think everyone else needs to hear. They don't necessarily want feedback about what they've said, but that's how they're going to disseminate information. It's not a discussion, and there is one author, whether that's one single person, one department, one project, one entity maybe is a better way to put it. It also is narrative. It's not fields of information, so it really doesn't fit into a typical type of list. It belongs on a web page. Remember that just because you can doesn't mean you should. You should be careful about what you put in your blog. If it's on your My Site, you need to make sure that the opinion that you're giving is okay to share. You need to make sure that the information you're putting out is okay to be read by anybody in the company. You need to make sure that if you're using your opinion, that it is an appropriate business opinion. One of the things I really like about blogs, though, is it prevents the force feeding of information. These days, everybody loves email. And let's just use the IT department as an example. When they have something to say, like the server will be down or we're going to do something unique, they send out a blast. Everybody in the company, whether that's 100 people or 10,000 people, all get that in their email. Unfortunately, only about 1 or 2% of the people actually care about what they have to say. Sorry, IT people, that's just the way it is sometimes. But you've already sent it all out, you've clogged up the email system, and everybody in the company has to now deal with that email in their inbox. Instead, blogs allow us to allow others to decide when they want to consume information. They know you have a blog, and if they're interested, they can go to that blog on their own time and on their own schedule. They also can go back and read older information and not have to go back and search for emails. So these are all the reasons blogs can be good. The functional focus is how to create posts, how to use categories to organize information in a blog, and how to manage comments from users if you're allowing those comments to be collected. So far, we've talked about some really useful alternative formats for lists in SharePoint. They provide ways to share information and even collaborate in a variety of ways. But what if you want to kind of turn the tables and gather information from others, not necessarily provide information? Then you need a method to do so in an organized and structured way. Enter the SharePoint survey. Surveys, of course, collect information or feedback or opinions. And they're really nice because they're very familiar and comfortable for most of us. We can fill in text fields. We can use drop-downs, radio buttons, and checkboxes. We can give ratings like strongly disagree or strongly agree, poor or excellent. We can use numbers and currency. We can put in dates and times. We can even select people that are part of our organization. There are a variety of other fields as well, but in general, surveys are simply a familiar and comfortable format. Now, there are some things that can be set up in surveys, so they all might work a little bit differently. For example, the number of times you can submit the survey could be just once per survey, or it could be multiple times per survey. If you were filling out a survey for your SharePoint 2013 video training, that might be a time you could only fill it out once. But if it was a survey on all training that you ever take within your company, then of course you would want to be able to fill out the survey multiple times, once for each different class you took. Also, your ability to edit results might vary. You might not be able to do any editing, You might be able to go in and edit your own entries, or on rare occasion, and I don't see this happen very often, sometimes it's set where you can edit anybody's entries. The survey results can be viewed as a summary, as an individual list where you can go in and see how each person responded to the survey, or as a graphical summary, which is a great way to see an overview in graph format. What results you can see, again, depends on how the survey is configured. So again, surveys are another one of those elements that can be truly useful, but they can also be easily overused. I have seen far too many companies go nuts and they survey their users to death. Hopefully that won't happen to you, because when used appropriately, surveys can actually be a fun way to gather useful information. And with SharePoint surveys, your company may no longer need to use third-party external survey mechanisms to do so. It can all be done in-house and in the same application you're probably already going to be using every day. So what you now know is really just an expansion of what you already knew about lists in SharePoint. Lists form the basis of data in SharePoint. Sometimes special functionality is needed, though, beyond the standard list. That's when we have these different alternatives. Discussions provide a way to create list entries that are organized to show the flow of posts and responses. Basically, an electronic conversation. Wikis are web pages that allow multiple authors to provide stronger information than any one person could. A truly collaborative document, but hosted in SharePoint where it's easily accessible. Wikis use their own special syntax, those double square brackets, to create links. But other than that, they are just web pages, and you can type and insert things like pictures to your heart's content. Blogs, on the other hand, provide a venue for sharing information and opinions with others who can review it on their own schedule. They're not being force-fed, and who may also respond to the author. Blogs are usually authored by one person or one entity. And lastly, surveys gather and easily consolidate information and feedback in a structured, managed way using familiar, comfortable types of input. So there you have an overview of the alternative methods of collecting and providing information in SharePoint. You may never see or be asked to use any of these, but the likelihood that you will is pretty high these days. 5 years ago, blogs and wikis were not very common. These days, they're part of our everyday information network, and that's no different in SharePoint. Now you understand what they are for, how they are different, and what additional skills you may need in order to use them.